As I say, there are all sorts of different versions. And this is an alternate version, which is the chair saver, or sorry, the chair sit and reach test by Jones. Now, the ramifications of this, really, you've got to think a little bit out of the box. You can see the position that the participant is adopting. It looks like the toe touch test from Kearton. It looks a little bit like the sit and reach test. It looks very similar to this position here that the Chinese group were using for the back saver sit and reach test. But why have they made this modification? Well, the argument is they wanted something that they could use in more clinical population groups where our back saver and our traditional sit and reach test from Wells and Dillion both require actually that the participant, sits on the floor. It requires that we have kind of a degree of flexibility to be able to complete that. If you've got an elderly population group or you've got somebody who's going through rehabilitation, that may not be appropriate to do. Same thing, same rules. Their argument is assessing lower back and hamstring flexibility. Again, we still don't know where the predominance of the range of motion is coming from. And so what you do, it's the dominant or the preferred leg is what is done. You could certainly compare it to the non-dominant. And all they do is they sit on the edge of the chair, and it's just the distance they can move beyond the extended toes. So it's very similar, right, to the toe touch test. And you just simply measure how far they can stretch beyond the toes. And so it's normalized to the individual. So one of the criticisms of the sit and reach test and the back saver sit and reach test is they don't have a fixed starting point. It's arbitrary, right? It's 23 centimeters, that distance from the base of the box to the kind of the zero line. And so that's clearly going to be affected by somebody's lower limb length. And so if you've got somebody who's got really long limbs, they're at a natural disadvantage compared to somebody who's got short, lower limbs. At least the positive here is, well, it's individual to the person, right? It's just based upon your own limb length. But there's a lot of issues here. Yes, it's reported to be reliable, okay, test-retest using interclass correlations. But ask yourself the questions that are at play in terms of the validity and also the variability you're going to get in this. There's nothing to say what the standard height of the chair should be. There's nothing to say how far forward on the chair you should sit. There's nothing to say what you should actually do with this leg here. As we saw in the two versions of the back saver from the group in Brazil where they were doing it at the sit and reach box and the group from China where they were sitting on kind of one of those gym benches, there was nothing standardized. And then this kind of distance in terms of just sliding down the leg, there's nothing again being standardized in terms of excuse me, the time taken, how many trials they should perform. It all feels very, very arbitrary. But the authors will argue it's easy to adopt, so it's actually quite valid in that sense, which one would agree with, and it's reliable. But the issue is the validity in the data in terms of what it is genuinely assessing, and it's affected by the variability. A test-retest within, so internally, is probably quite good, but an external is probably really poor because of not having primary indications in terms of chair heights, in terms of chair displacements, all of those factors which would affect the reliability of the test. So you can just see here, this is just a data set, and again, there's not an awful lot of data out there, so it really does, provide an area for interest. We've got our chair sit scores here, so we've got men and women, and what you can see is you've got a test-retest, and they've just done simple correlation values, so these aren't even really interclass correlations here. So we can criticize this as a tool for reliability, but if we just look at kind of the raw data, there's a little bit of variability in the men, there's very little variability in the women, but actually the standard deviations in both groups are fairly similar. So it does seem to be that there is reasonable test-retest reliability within this. Seems to be easily repeatable, which is good. The issue fundamentally comes down to that validity of what is being assessed.